Usually takes a few well, not minutes, but seconds for it to come through to Twitch. Yeah. Awesome.
Live on the internet. It's good stuff.
Let's see if, how are you doing? Yeah, okay, cool. Yay! So the stream is working, and we'll get started in like a minute. Get started. Ooh, I can hear myself. Where am I?
Yeah, that
was you.
Yeah, I just opened up Twitch to see what was happening.
Nice.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it is 12:30. So for anybody who's watching and maybe needs to duck out, once the stream is done, we will export this to YouTube where it will live forever. So, if we don't get to your question, no worries. Hopefully we'll get to it later. We should have captions coming through. But there may be a little hiccup there right now. So, but yeah, anyway, this voice you're hearing is Caitlin Cashin from the marketing team, and Kyle is our CEO, co-founder. Probably know who he is. So let's go ahead and get started. So our first Slido question here is, in 2018, you blogged about a new version of Gatsby with incremental and parallelizing builds. What's the status and roadmap for incremental builds with Gatsby?
Yeah, so very popular question, both here and then in general. Because yeah, I mean that's kind of the original premise for what we're doing. Let me turn notifications off here. Yeah, it's like, we're building a great development framework and we're going to make builds really fast, which then enables Gatsby to be used for a lot more stuff, other than kind of traditional stacks like generator type use cases, so that you can use it as sort of like a full-blown CMS replacement by, connecting it up to different headless CMS vendors. So the question is like, 2018 sounds like a long time ago. Well, the story actually starts even earlier, because Gatsby was open source first in like 2015. And I started thinking about like incremental builds in 2016 when I started like creating the redesign of Gatsby that became V1, which was released in 2017. Let's see, let me share my screen. I can like show a bit. Maybe I'll fix it.
No, it just had to do with the setup. Did you shut off your screen share, or?
Yeah, I just turned it off.
Okay. Did you want to share again?
Sharing again.
Okay. Sound is back. Okay, cool. We fixed it.
Is sound back with the screen share?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Well, I'll leave it up now because I stopped sharing that. But yeah, so back up a bit. Yeah, so 2016, 2017 V1 was released, and under the hood was like the necessary bits in order to enable incremental builds. And then we need to raise money because like Gatsby was huge and blowing up, and there needs to be a lot more engineers working on it full time in order to like keep it going. And that happened like 2018, and then like in the last couple of years, we've done like a ton of work on core in order to enable incremental builds. It's been a lot of work to just like really deeply analyze this problem because it's a very non-trivial problem to enable incremental builds that's reliable and works at any scale and is like super fast. Like, sub 10-second deployment times is what we're aiming for. And yeah, and then like you also need like very specialized cloud infrastructure to make this happen. And so, the end of like 2019 is when we started working on that. November of last year is when we launched Gatsby Cloud, and then in a month, like February or January, when was it? January 28th, I believe, is when we launched Gatsby Builds, which was all the pieces necessary to build Gatsby sites on our infrastructure and deploy them to the CDN of your choice. And so that was sort of all the necessary underpinnings to do incremental builds now. And so now we're working on like sort of like a specialized kind of builder for Gatsby that will enable incremental builds for any type of site at any scale. Yeah, so that's kind of the state of the world. It's like our top priority. We're working on it full time. We're making very, very good progress. If you haven't heard, we have a private beta sign up list that you can get onto to try out incremental builds, and it's close. No specific days or anything, but yeah, things are happening. So it's very, very exciting to like. Literally years of work has gone into getting to this point, so it's very exciting to kind of see it, unfolding now, and we're very excited to start sharing it with the rest of you because it's going to be a massive improvement for build times on your site.
Cool. All right. The next question we had was, what is the roadmap on SSR support for Gatsby?
Yeah, so this is a common question. So first, we'll step back a little bit, like a little terminology. So SSR is like you take a React app and then you render it to a string. And so oftentimes people think about this in sort of like a traditional, HTML server rendering sort of a way, where a request comes in and the web server fetches some data, assembles some HTML on the fly and pushes it out, and then you have some sort of like caching layer to make that like you don't have to do it on literally every request, but you're still doing it on a lot because caching's hard and it gets complicated. And that's how almost every website, a lot of apps work, is that they just sort of do this sort of on the fly, at runtime generation of HTML. And the whole point of Gatsby is we think that's bad. We think that's a terrible model. It's expensive, it's slow, it's like has all sorts of like security problems. Yeah, that's the main thing. And I mean, this is why like Jamstack, like static generators, etc., are so nice because you don't have to do that. You like build things ahead of time. You only like for a given page, you build it once, you stick it on a CDN, and then you don't ever have to touch it again. And like CDNs are extremely good at serving any number of visitors very quickly, files. But yeah, so people, but like anyways, people still want it, and like, and anyway, so the reasons people aren't satisfied with like the static site generator model, like the pre-build ahead of time, build type model is, they're like, well, that's cool, but it doesn't actually work in the real world. They're like, well, my site, it's like my site's too big, so the builds get slow, or we often need to push out changes, very quickly. Like the data is changing all the time. And so that doesn't work with like sort of a build model. And our assertion is that fast enough builds changes all of that. That the reason for moving to runtime SSR is because you can't build fast enough. It's like pre-building is always better in every scenario because it's faster, more secure, it's cheaper, it's more scalable, it's a lot less complicated architecture. There's like every kind of like any sort of facet, it's like nicer. And our whole goal as Gatsby is that no one's ever like taken that model and pushed it as far as it can go and made it actually truly generalizable and usable in any situation. And that's what we're working to do, is like make like the pre-built model like actually work for everybody in every situation. And so that the idea of like a runtime SSR setup isn't necessary anymore. And that's what incremental builds comes in, because the point of incremental builds is to make deployment time of data changes, build happens, gets deployed to a CDN, like make that process like super reliable and super fast, like under 10 seconds. And if it happens under 10 seconds, then you never need to do runtime SSR, because ahead of time SSR is accomplishes the goal of like something changes, it's live on the internet, because that's what everyone's looking for. And there's never really been an alternative to sort of like runtime SSR, but we're creating that. All that being said, there's two use cases where you really do need runtime SSR, which is, one is personalization. So you want someone's logged in, or you're doing some sort of like IP sniffing or GeoIP or some other way of figuring out who the person is and then personalizing the content. So a lot of like marketing, a lot of like marketing folks like this, because they can be like, okay, we have a product and has two very different audiences. And so if we have a chance of figuring out who it is, we would love to show our messaging that's specific to, audience one, or if it's audience two, show the messaging specific to them. Because then there's like a very real difference in conversion rates, because like, each audience kind of gets a pitch that like actually appeals to them versus, another pitch would be like, yeah, that's not for me, where it actually really is for them. It's just like two audiences want the same thing. So personalization is awesome. It works. And people want it. And that's like a great use case for runtime SSR, because then you really do want to assemble the page on the fly, because something is different about each person coming in. And you can't pre-build for like too much divergence and needs. Like it actually does make sense to do it on the fly. And the other use case that runtime SSR makes a lot of sense is like A/B testing, multivariant testing, where again, based on a number of variables, you want to like put somebody into a bucket and then create a kind of experience on the site specific to that person. And key to that working is that the initial request is already sort of, for that person. They're already in the bucket. And that's, again, hard to do with like a pre-build sort of method, because just the number of variants can grow a lot. So it's like trying to like pre-build every page for every possible variance could quickly turn into this like exponential math. It's like, enough grains of rice to fill the universe type thing. Maybe you got that analogy. Anyways, so those are two use cases that keep coming up that we're like, yeah, that needs like a runtime SSR. But we want to do it in a way that's, coherent with sort of the rest of our model, that it's like something that's like scalable, simple, robust, etc. And so I see Hashim giving hints over to the answer there, which is like, you want to do SSR on the edge, because one of the big advantages of CDNs is that request comes to a server that's like very near them. So it's like very like fast. So it's like request comes in like to a server somewhere in the country that they're at, and then like, response goes right back. So it's very quick, it's very robust. There's no weird, cross oceanic, requests that adds a lot of time latency. And and so anyway, so roughly what we're thinking is that part of the build, like when you're setting up a Gatsby site, you'd be able to like assign certain pages that they are personalized or part of some sort of like testing, A/B testing type thing. and then there'd be like a special package created that which would be deployed to an edge worker on a CDN, and then that would then run in response to requests and have like caching built in, so it's like pretty efficient. And so you would get all the benefits of pre-building, but you'd be able to do as much, personalization, A/B testing on the edge. So it's like it's still fast, it's still simple, it's still extremely scalable. So it's like still Gatsby-ish, but you get the benefits of that. So it's like, so in our mind, it's like SSR is just, it works, but it's like, but why? I mean, why? So to us, the answer is incremental builds and edge, edge personalization as needed.
All right. Cool. So our next question is, what's a realistic availability timeline for incremental builds using WordPress with WP GraphQL?
Awesome question. Yeah, we're super excited about the work we're doing on WordPress and Gatsby. So for those who don't know, Gatsby uses APIs from CMSs to kind of like bridge those two and then, create sites from that. Driven by, GraphQL and our data layer, etc. I wrote the first like Gatsby source WordPress like a few years ago, and that used the kind of built-in WordPress REST API. And that worked, like tons of people have used it. It's one of the most popular source plugins. But the problem is it's just not very fast, and it's like it's hard to make work with like all the different plugins in the WordPress ecosystem. And while I was working that, I got to know Jason Ball, who started another project, WP GraphQL, which addresses a lot of the problems that the built-in REST API has. It's like it has all the advantages that GraphQL has over REST. Plus, also he's been very careful to make it like much faster, and that it's like really easy to for WordPress plugin to get kind of pulled into the GraphQL schema. And it adds a lot of guarantees around like the data types and so forth that the REST API doesn't give us. So anyway, so last year we really liked Jason, and we're like WordPress is like very kind of important partner, I guess, like with Gatsby, kind of partner CMS with Gatsby, and like, okay, we really want to have like really great support for Gatsby plus WordPress. So we ended up hiring Jason to work full time on improving WP GraphQL and like taking it to 1.0. And then we also hired another engineer, Tyler Barnes, who's also done like a ton of kind of Gatsby WordPress work. And the two of them together are creating like a really amazing integration that's just like incredible. So if they've been posting some videos online. So if you like follow them, find them on Twitter, you can see videos that they've done of like, clicking like save in WordPress, and then the Gatsby develop server, like a second or two later, like pops up with a change. And the way they've been able to do that is like adding GraphQL subscription support to WordPress, so that every change that happens in WordPress gets like pushed to Gatsby, and then drives that updates. And so this is very similar to like if you use like Gatsby plus Sanity. That can like drive. So anyways, it's kind of like I was saying earlier around incremental builds, is that in the development process, we've had support for kind of like incremental updates of data changes to the site working for the last 3 years. So incremental builds with this new stack is just depending on us getting it working in Gatsby Cloud, because that requires a lot of kind of special infrastructure in our cloud to make work. So as soon as that's ready, then this new WP GraphQL Gatsby source WordPress plugin will also be working for incremental builds. So there's nothing you can do to help with the cloud stuff per se, but where you can jump in and like get this to a stable, awesome point is like jumping in and testing the WP GraphQL work and the new Gatsby source WordPress plugin. There's an issue, kind of like a big issue about like what's the status of that you can find. And so if you just jump in, test it, find bugs, and help get that stable, then that's the main way that we can kind of push towards getting this new things going as fast as we can.
Cool. All right. Our next question, and it's a recent question, so I'm glad we're getting to it. What should we consider when starting a new Gatsby JS project that might have over 100,000 pages?
Yeah, so, well, see, you should think that, I guess, like, so first is that is possible. We have benchmark sites that build 100,000 pages, and it's great. Right now, like the main concern is like is sort of I guess like the main answer, like how you answer that question for yourself is how like the build times, like is that acceptable for the kind of the parameters of the project, and so you just need to like figure that out, like how long of delay is like acceptable. But I will say that with like incremental builds and a lot of other work we're doing, like build times are going to be dropping a lot. So it's kind of it's a very doable thing. Whether it's acceptable right now is like TBD. But you just kind of have to try it and like figure that out. But we're working. One thing we're also working on is a bunch of benchmark sites that will run at different kind of sizes, and then we'll be able to like show you whether exactly how long for a given Gatsby plus source, like how long builds take with that, and I'll give you a lot more information about whether it's a good fit or not for your particular use case.
Great. All right. So our next question, you've gone over this a little bit, but it's probably worth giving it a quick revisit. Their question was, I second the SSR support for Gatsby question. How can we get SSR support for pages that contain data or content backed by an API? This would be for SEO purposes.
Yeah, so I mean, Gatsby has great SEO support. Like tons and tons of people build sites backed by APIs. So, I mean, you can do this. You can either use like a source plugin, or you can like directly query APIs to get data to kind of populate pages. So we have great tutorials about how to do this. But yeah, to answer that is it's working. The distinction again is between like build time SSR versus runtime SSR. And again, our contention is that you want to pre-build your site so that it's like a simple architecture. It's hosted on CDN, it's fast, it's secure, it's stable, it's cheap. And runtime SSR, which is sort of the traditional way of doing things, is much, much more complicated, and you want to avoid it whenever you can. And yeah, and for us, like we have really great support for build time SSR, and we're working to make it ever faster. Because like once it gets below like 10 seconds for kind of build and deployment times, then there is no use case in which you can't switch completely over to kind of ahead of time building.
Cool. All right, now we're getting into some specific stuff here. So working with images is a pain, and the distinction between page and static query seems a wrong API. The issue number 10482 seems to fix both. What's the plan?
So I agree it's not as great as it could be. And basically, the plan is to revisit this at some point in the future. I mean, we have a ton on our plate right now, so that's sort of been the constraint. Our main focus is improving build times for everybody. So yeah, there's no strong updates past that. I mean, it's something that we keep thinking about, and we have some ideas of what we want to do, but they're big enough changes and that we haven't dove into them.
Cool.
I agree that we have something more concrete to say.
Yeah, there's always a lot to prioritize. Is there going to be a WordPress integration with Gatsby Cloud?
Yes. So so kind of going off what I was saying earlier about all the work we're doing to like make WordPress, Gatsby amazing integration. The other kind of big question is like, well, how do you create new Gatsby WordPress sites? It's like, because if you look at like hosted kind of CMSs, one thing that's very nice is you just like click a button, you have a new instance. And so we've been talking to a number of kind of WordPress hosting companies that are creating, or various stages of creating WordPress hosting that's optimized for this sort of like API only kind of use case for WordPress. And so the plan is that you'll be able to go to Gatsby Cloud. You'll be like, I want a Gatsby WordPress site, and then you'll authenticate to one of these services, and then it'll all be set up in just like a few minutes. And then you'll have something that you can like hand off to your clients. Like you like the WordPress CMS, admin content editing screens. You can like, okay, log in here, hand it off, and then it'll just like drive fast builds and preview and so forth for them. So we're really excited about that because like WordPress is obviously an amazing CMS. It's got like a ton of work to kind of user interface. A lot of people love it. A lot of people use it, and we're committed to making that like a really great experience with Gatsby.
Cool. And if anybody is, just kind of listening in, if you want to submit a question, you can go to slido.com. That's slido.com and input the number 4852, and you can submit a question, upvote other questions, etc. It's pretty cool. All right. So the next question is, how should I deal with Cloud CMS API limits? Our fetching takes a long time as our CMS does not allow, such and such amount of queries per second. Should we consider moving away?
Yeah, that's a tough question. So like I mentioned earlier, we're working on like benchmark sites to show exactly how long different size sites take to build with different, CMSs. And because the thing about them not allowing that, like it's like the reason I guess is that like how Gatsby uses CMS APIs is different than most, because most people, it's sort of like the API requests are spread out over time, where Gatsby wants to just do a big gulp, like suck it all in, and then ideally just do kind of like incremental syncs after that. So it's like do an initial big gulp, and then whenever something changes, the CMS sends the delta. Like, okay, like these three things have these small changes, and it's like a very quick, fast update. And so ideally the CMS has like kind of like a sync API that's like optimized for Gatsby's use case. And because it's actually not, it's very efficient for them to do stuff like that. It's like not very expensive. But anyway, so long term, our goal is to like keep working with different CMS vendors to educate them on the type of APIs that they need to like, make Gatsby cluster CMS like excellent. And but anyways, that's long term. In the short term, if it's causing trouble, then there's a lot of CMSs that are super fast, even at very large sites. Like we've been testing, with the incremental builds work and like these benchmarking stuff. We've been testing 100,000 page plus sites with different CMSs, and like a number of them are fully ready for that sort of thing. So and that's part again why we're going to be publishing these benchmark results, because then you can more you can like evaluate the different like type of CMSs and see which one's going to be a good fit for what you're trying to do.
Very cool. All right. So our next question is, are there going to be any big Gatsby core releases coming up?
So yes and no. We release awesome stuff all the time. I'll share my screen real quick. And
switch to that view. There we go. Hopefully everybody can still hear us.
Yeah, if you want a good look at what we've been up to, this is Sid from the, he's on the core team at Gatsby. He wrote up a 2019 recap. And in 2019, we made 467 releases, so not bad. And yeah, I kind of walked through like a bunch of stuff that we released along the way. And that's our model, is that like, big bang releases, they're kind of exciting, but we think constantly shipping improvements is, the fastest, best way to build software. Yeah. So anyway, so kind of about like things that, the most exciting, biggest release that's coming is like incremental builds. And beyond that, I mean, we're working on like, I don't know, dozen different things. And then, yeah, it's like Gatsby's like this huge ecosystem. Like there's people releasing new plugins, new components, new themes. We get like 100 PR. There's like 100 PRs merged a week, roughly. So it's like something would have to be extremely big to like, to kind of stand out in sort of the ongoing cacophony of changes that are happening.
Cool. And it looks like there was a slight hiccup with the screen sharing again. We appreciate your patience as we learn our streaming tools. But Kyle was just sharing the recent Gatsby Gazette that was posted on the blog. I think the core team tries to get those out at kind of like a monthly cadence, and they're a great place to go and see like what are some recent updates and what might be coming down the line. So definitely check those out. Our next question is, shadowing pages is difficult. Query collection gets in the way of shadowing pages effectively when using different data sources. Is this a known issue? Is it being addressed?
Yeah, actually, on the previous, Caitlin, you want to post the link to?
Yeah, I'll go track it down. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So so shadowing. Long and short is that, we released Gatsby themes last year, and there's a ton of work that got into that, but there's still a lot more to do before we're like really happy with it. And working more on kind of like the polishing pieces has been delayed longer than we'd hoped. Again, lots of stuff happening. It's like a little bit, but long and short of it is that we have big plans for improving Gatsby themes this year, and among the many things that we want to do will be, diving deep on these kind of like nagging kind of usability issues and making that really smooth. So yes, known issue, being addressed at this very moment, no, but it will be happening.
Cool. All right. Our next question is, how do you make awesome documentation? I saw other projects, but the documentation of Gatsby has a special place in my heart. Oh, we'll have to let the learning team know.
Yeah. Thanks for really appreciate the compliment. I mean, it's like most things. Like, why does anything get good? It's like somebody cares and they have sufficient time, resources to do something about that caring. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, we really care about teaching people how to use Gatsby. It's like, it doesn't make any sense to us to create software that then nobody can use because they have no idea what's going on. So we care a lot, and then we're in the fortunate position of being able to, spend a lot of time on it. Being a commercial open source company means that we can hire people to work full time on critical stuff like this. So we now have, a full team of kind of, really dedicated software engineers who care a lot about like teaching and people how to use stuff, that, are curating and building and writing documentation. And we're just like super excited, super lucky that they've joined us, and because the benefit is huge for everyone who's like looking into using Gatsby or trying to do stuff, because it just saves so much time when you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then what do I need to do? And then you can like search for it, and you can find a tutorial or doc page that somebody spent like days researching and writing and editing and like passing it around for review and like testing it again with people, it's so helpful, and it makes, like, we believe that, like, the product that we're creating is not just code, but it's like the whole experience. It's like enabling people to be successful at building stuff, and documentation is part and parcel of that. It's like a huge part of it, so we prioritize it accordingly.
Cool. Yeah, and the learning team who does our documentation is also doing some Twitch streams. It seems like a good time to plug Aisha's upcoming stream on March 19th at 2:30. Yeah, at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. She'll be doing an hour tutorial on how to connect a CMS and a shopping cart to a Gatsby site. So definitely those streams have been really fantastic so far. The past ones are on YouTube. Definitely check those out. Alrighty. The next question, when is the next Gatsby Days?
So we do have one planned, and I'm pretty sure I'm not authorized to say anything about that.
We should have information soon on that.
Yeah. So Caitlin's a big part of like planning those. So she will have more info soon.
I think we did post the date on the website technically. So it'll be June 1st in Amsterdam.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, the rest of the details are TBD.
Yeah, come to Amsterdam. That'd be hot.
Yeah. All right. Our next question, any plans for Gatsby source Drupal to support some kind of caching when retrieving thousands of nodes from Drupal?
Yeah, so Drupal is another integration that we care a lot about making really good. Drupal is a very popular CMS. It's open source like WordPress, and and like tons of like hundreds of thousands of sites built with it. And we think it's like a really great fit for using with Gatsby. It has sort of a lot of the same kind of ethos about it. And so we've been working on that with different people in the Drupal community for a while. And we actually recently hired to work on it full time Shane Thomas, who's had been like a sort of he was at an agency and like had been doing a lot of like kind of Drupal Gatsby work. And so we expect the pace of improvements on the integration to kind of step up now because of that. And so I mean, just like we're really dedicated to having like sub 10-second deploy times for like Gatsby plus WordPress. The same thing with Drupal. We're working towards sub 10-second deploy times for like Gatsby plus Drupal, and everything that we know about it and makes that like a very achievable goal.
Great. All right. We did get a question in the Q&A about the other streams. Oh no, it's okay if you want to post questions in the chat or Slido, either's good. But yeah, in the Twitch channel, there's information about the upcoming stream. We'll also promote on social media. If you're in the 100 Days of Gatsby newsletter, we always make sure to email that mailing list a week or so before the stream. So it'll be there. And if you miss it for whatever reason, it will be on YouTube afterwards. All right, our next question, what's your favorite pizza place?
That's a great question. So I live in Berkeley, California, which is a very lovely place. And one of the reasons that's very lovely is it has a great food scene. So there's some like local pizza places which are fantastic. There's one called Sliver, which is great. And Gather, and Jupiter. And what's the last one? I'm drawing a blank for some reason. Anyway, there's another one that I really like too. But yeah, you should come to Berkeley and look up pizza on Yelp and stuff yourself, because it worked out well.
Very contentious pizza environment, I feel like.
Yeah.
All right. Our next question, is native TypeScript on the roadmap?
Yeah, so that's a popular request. Like TypeScript's gotten like super popular in the last year. We have a great plugin for adding TypeScript support. That's like, so it's pretty easy to get like, you can just start writing pages built with TypeScript. But what people find lacking though is that there's like the built-in Gatsby, like kind of JavaScript stuff. So like Gatsby Node, Gatsby Browser, etc. don't support. Well, Gatsby Browser actually does, but Gatsby Node and Gatsby SSR don't support TypeScript out of the box. And also, it's just like nicer if you didn't have to enable a plugin, I guess. So yeah, so we are that is on the roadmap. That's something that we've already decided we want to do. So it's possible a community member will jump in and drive that. Whether, when exactly we'll get to it is unclear, but that does seem like, that is something we want to do.
Cool. Next one, very short question. Any ETA on used query?
So that is, that was an experiment we did, sort of a proof of concept on a way of sort of creating a more flexible, hook-based query approach for getting data into pages and components. But we ran into some kind of, the prototype worked, but it created a lot of trouble. It made, one of the big things is it made it very hard to, it had had some pretty severe implications for build times, for example, was one big problem. And so that particular implementation was scrapped. We do like the design of the API a ton. So if there's a way of, creating that, which also then, kind of maintains sort of key properties of Gatsby, then we'd love to ship that. But yeah.
Cool. And we got another pizza recommendation in chat. Delfina, closer to Dolores Park, is amazing for if you're looking for a nice pizza place. So
yeah, we're talking San Francisco. It's just the world opens up to even broader, grander vistas. I was restricting. I don't like to travel. I work like 4 blocks away from where I live, and if I'm going to eat somewhere, I only want to go like maybe a half mile. I don't really want to go very far. And so, San Francisco sites.
Well, maybe pizza can become a feature of this Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
That would be fun. All right, our next question. What are your thoughts on Rust and WebAssembly as future tools to build websites? And does Gatsby have any plans to incorporate them at some point?
Yeah, so WebAssembly is super exciting, as is Rust, which is a great fit for WebAssembly. Generally speaking, that sort of approach is most beneficial for kind of heavier apps that you're building like native for the web. So, Figma is a great example of a web application that heavily leverages WebAssembly because it's like doing kind of traditional desktop app stuff with like heavy computation and the JavaScript's like not as good at. And so those sorts of things then are very nice for WebAssembly. So Gatsby itself is pretty lightweight, when it's in the client. It doesn't like do a lot. It just sort of like pulls in your pages and your data and then like renders them. And that sort of work is like very, it's like mostly just relying on the browser doing it fast, and it just sort of like hands it off to it. So it wouldn't benefit by using WebAssembly directly. But, WebAssembly support is in Webpack. So, if you're building an application with Gatsby and you want WebAssembly, then you're already ready to go. And so, yeah, we think there's a lot of use cases for specific applications that makes a ton of sense. But for Gatsby as sort of the framework, like it's unlikely that we'll do anything specific with WebAssembly.
All right. Thank you very much. Our next question. Are you all trying to catch up to Next.js's way smaller JS bundle size?
Yeah, so the Chrome team has been doing a lot of research on how to like optimize JavaScript loading. And so anyways, they come up with some like nice ways. So like Next and Gatsby have like almost identical, like Gatsby, Next, Create React App have almost identical Webpack configurations. And then the Chrome team did a bunch of research to figure out ways to improve that, the kind of the bundling algorithm. And then that's been implemented in Next. And one of the engineers on our team has also been working to port that to Gatsby. And so is doing a lot of actually testing on it right now. So it should land pretty soon because it's not like a big change. It's just it just needs like thoroughly tested in a variety of scenarios to make sure that we're improving it. So it should be the same again soon.
Cool. All right. Our next question is, I'm going to implement Gatsby massively in my projects. Which approach do you think is good to have in mind? Do you have recommendations and insights?
Depends what massively means, I guess. If you're talking about like lots of sites and you like want to have some way of making that sensible, we built Gatsby themes for that, for that exact purpose, where you can like take common parts of sites and put it into a theme and then share that across a bunch of sites. Like a lot of companies are leveraging that pretty heavily now that are doing a lot of sites. And actually, I feel really bad now about pizza because Little Caesars, of course. Those of you who don't know, Little Caesars is now built on Gatsby, littlecaesars.com. So if I were to order pizza online, Little Caesars would be my favorite pizza by far because I would want to use Gatsby while ordering my pizza. It kind of makes sense. But anyways, I in context of what you're saying here, so they've rolled out one of their sites with Gatsby, and then they have like 20, I forget exactly what they told me, like 25 more sites that they're, different like kind of international and different variants of the kind of their main site. And they're going to be converting those to Gatsby as well this year. And their strategy has been like, they've kind of decomposed the functionality of the site into a number of themes so that then they can just like, building the new site is now not like building it from scratch, but it's just sort of like pick this theme, pick this theme, pick this theme, configure it a bit, hook it up to the specific data for that site, and then voila, you have a site. And like you're sharing a lot of components, a lot of code, a lot of configuration across them, and it really, really speeds things up and makes it a lot more reliable and simple. So that's like awesome, and that's the main thing. It's like the way to make any software project scale is to, not try to do a big thing, just to do a lot of simple things that then you combine together into do the bigger thing. Someone sends a chat. That's the answer we're looking for. Sorry for forgetting you. I love you. Anyway.
Oh, it was a plant all along. They were just trying to get a Little Caesars plug. Yeah. Hey, I mean,
I feel bad now. Yeah. I mean,
crazy bread is always.
I said, of course, Little Caesars is my favorite pizza.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Our next question: how do projects like Blocks UI and Theme UI fit into the broader Gatsby ecosystem?
Yeah. So I mean. So for those not familiar, Blocks is a really cool open source project that's John Otander, who works at Gatsby, has been working on for forever, and released an alpha last December, I think, and then is continuing to work on it with a growing open source community around it. And what it lets you do is it's like a bunch of Babel plugins and like a UI that let you directly open up JSX code and then edit them in sort of like a visual editor. So think some sort of like typical design tool with like, anyways, it's really cool. You just go to the website and you can try out the demo, and it's awesome. And then Theme UI is a way to kind of like incorporate a design system into your site so that like components can like use Theme UI derived design tokens, and then so anyways, it just sort of decouples like your design system from your components so that you can like take a component and then drop it in any number of sites, and then depending on the design tokens, like they'll just like look and feel a little bit different. So it's very, again, like driving reuse is paramount to kind of making things simpler and faster and better over time. And so Theme UI is a big part of that, and then Blocks is like enabling, non-technical people to edit stuff. So anyway, so the goal of blocks is to basically make like React websites and apps manipulatable by far more people other than just straight up, front-end engineers. And we think that's really important because, it's like if you look at any website or app, it's not just engineers working on it. Like lots of other people care about it. Like Caitlin here is not a engineer. Maybe well, I don't know. Maybe you do a little coding on the weekends or something.
A little bit.
Okay, she doesn't code on the weekend, but she does a lot of stuff on our websites, and it would be great if she could do more. There are times that Caitlin is blocked. She's like, I want this to happen, and then somebody has to come along and do it for her, and that's not ideal. It's like it's her idea, it's her vision. It's like she's like, I want to do this. Like she's a creator, like she's imagined something, but the tools don't allow her to directly build that in Gatsby right now, and that's a shame. So we're very inspired by it's like all these like no code and other type like movements. It's like this is the future that we should. It's like people can create digital artifacts, but don't have to spend a year learning like the underlying code. So whenever possible, enable tooling on top of things that lets people, more people get involved to build stuff.
Yay. Yeah. Yay. Plus, it feels like a waste of time to have to grab a developer to be like, I just want a table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's so inefficient. You're like, I need this. And then it's like, who knows when you can, it's silly.
Yeah. Stuff. All right. So we got 10 minutes left and a lot of questions. We'll do our best to get through what we can, but if we don't get to your question, you can always reach out to us on, Twitter, etc. All right. Next question. Is there a limit on the size of a website generated with Gatsby? At what point does the build time become unmanageable?
Yeah, so I'll give 30-second answers now. Okay, so first is it's a moving target. Depends a lot on the source you're using. There's a lot of variables, so I can't give like a definitive point. We're creating benchmark sites, which we'll soon be publishing, which will actually give you at this point in time, this is exactly how long builds take for this integration, for this size of site. But yeah, it's a moving target because like we're doing a lot of initiatives to drive that down. Peter is a newish engineer, and he's been doing a lot of like deep dives on like kind of performance issues, and and a lot of like he had this recent site that was like taking 5 hours to build. It was like 180,000 pages, and it took 5 hours, and he took it down to like 5 minutes. And so, I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but there is a lot of things that we've wanted to do and are doing and will do to drive down stuff. So what is the limit? I mean, honestly, you just have to build a prototype and find out, and then you'll see. Okay, next question.
Next question. What is the best way to handle images from an asset manager, for example, Cloudinary? Download the images at build time or fetch at every page request?
So actually, there's just a new plugin created for Cloudinary that lets you generate, if you've used Gatsby image before, you know how you can like kind of query for an image. So you can say, I want an image that's like 500 pixels by 500 pixels. And then it gets inserted into your page with Gatsby image, the Gatsby image component. And so Cloudinary released a plugin that lets you do the same thing with images on Cloudinary, which is great because then you don't have to do any like build time image processing. Like it just generates a URL with all the transformations in the image URLs. And so at runtime, it just says, hey, Cloudinary, I need this image. And then it like generates it for you. And that's awesome. So that is the best way. It's like Gatsby plugin Cloudinary, Gatsby source Cloudinary. I'm not entirely sure.
Great. All right, next question. Gatsby is now funded and has to deliver to the investors. What is your take on open core versus open source? Also, I love everything you do. Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you. Very nice. There's a lot of stuff there, and I'm only giving 30 seconds. So first, well, we're not open core, I guess is one helpful clarification. We're like open source plus cloud services. We're more actually like GitHub, like Git is like fully open source, and then GitHub like hosts Git for you and provides like collaboration tools around Git. And so that's pretty much the model we're focusing. Open core is more, you have open source, but then you have like proprietary add-ons, and that's like more typical of like open source, databases is a very common kind of open core type model where you have proprietary bits that you can like plug into it. Anyways, I'm a huge fan, obviously, of like funded open source because open source is like a brilliant way to build things. It's like it gives like maximum freedom, maximum kind of like velocity for the project. Like like if you have proprietary stuff, there's just all sorts of like kind of like random edge stuff that the proprietary is never going to do. But open source, it's like you want a plugin for Gatsby that does this like weirdo thing, like do it. That's awesome. Like make that weird thing, and then you and the 10 other people in the entire world who care about it, you're happy as clams because now you have your plugin. And so that's sort of like very frictionless innovation is like what we're trying to enable. But it's like open source has like this sort of like periphery and it has like core bits. And so the core bits needs like it's very complicated and has like very, it needs a lot of like sophisticated software, dedicated software engineering time. And so that's the problem with open source is like, it's like the periphery is doing great, but then the core kind of like doesn't do so great. And what you need to like make the open source model actually work is like people working on the core need to be funded. It needs to be like, I'm going to be here for years and I'm going to think really hard and do a lot of like long-term thinking and planning and development to continue to move the core, that like the beating heart of this forward. And to do that, that's like millions of dollars. And so like, where do millions of dollars come from? They come typically from a business that like needs that core to be good. And so, wrapping open source with a business model that like requires the kind of the beating heart of the open source project to be maintained and improved is like the best way to have like a great open source project in my mind, because millions of dollars just don't show up otherwise. And so, yeah, so we're hoping to like, we're hoping this works out really well. And we think we have, a great open source project. We think we have a great business that's like developing with the kind of the launch of Gatsby Cloud. And it's like something that, almost everyone would be super happy with. I think it's like I think it's possible to kind of reconcile all these different pressures.
Great. All right. Our next question, are you continuing to work on even more good accessibility defaults for Gatsby in the future? How important is accessibility regarded within Gatsby?
Yes, we are. There's a number of improvements on the roadmap that we're continuing to work on. How important? I mean, we hired a open source engineer to work full-time on this, Madeline Parker. She was the one that like another engineer, Marcy, like kind of did a lot of initial exploration for improving kind of defaults for like certain screen readers that weren't working with Gatsby. And like Madeline then did like a ton of more research and work and testing to kind of like fully release that. There's a great blog post came out like a few weeks ago, a month ago, whatever it was, that kind of goes into a lot of detail about that. And Madeline actually then goes into detail there as well about kind of some additional things that we're doing, which is largely around like education, plus it's like accessibility is like you can provide good defaults, but you also need the ability, like as you're creating stuff, you need the ability to kind of like, you need building blocks to make different things you're building also accessible. And so we're creating more kind of like little like components to solve different accessibility problems that you can then use in your applications to make sure that it continues to be accessible, kind of building on the strong core that we provide in your application. Another initiative that we're working on is a Gatsby component library, and we're working on finding like collaborators across the industry, because it's a very big job to create a component library that's like fast, accessible, super flexible. Yeah, that's part of the long-term plan too, is that you'll be able to like have this like really solid Gatsby specific component library that will be accessible by default. So it's like not just like the core bits that Gatsby controls right now, which is just like routing, but if you're like, oh, I need this complicated widget, you can just use ours and be confident that it's going to be accessible to everybody who might visit your site or app.
Yeah, and in general, people at Gatsby care a lot about accessibility. I mean, I used to work at the same accessibility company that Marcy did, and I've seen a lot of developers who are not interested in accessibility. So it's been nice to see how much people do care at Gatsby about accessibility. All right, next question. I really love the Gatsby project, and I know your team is composed of really high-skilled developers. How can a regular developer join the Gatsby team?
I'm not sure. I guess continue.
I mean,
maybe you're already there. Maybe you just need to apply and find out. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're obviously not gonna be able to hire everyone. We're the Gatsby community is out here, and we're like just a tiny little piece of it. So we'd love to have you. And if you really want to do it, I mean, there's as we grow, there's probably going to be a spot where you can fit in. But yeah, just continue to learn and grow and stretch yourself. And that's how, I mean, no skilled developers started skilled. They started a baby like everyone else, and they learned how to like put on pants and someday learn how to type and then learn to program and then just kept going. So it's like just keep stretching yourself and yeah, we'd love to work with you.
Yeah, and we do, there are job postings on the gatsbyjs.com website if you want to look. There's also a dream job option if you don't see a position you already like. Of course, any company that is sort of at our place in growth, it's it's like we have to get more senior developers before we can start hiring lower level stuff. And I think we're probably still in that place in a lot of cases. But yeah, keep trying. All right. We'll do one question, even though it's 1:30, but this is a good question. Will Gatsby version 3 be a breaking change or have any breaking changes?
Yeah, there's a few breaking changes that we're considering making as part of a V3. It should be pretty minor and not affect most people. So that's the hope. V1 to V2 had more breaking changes. That was fairly minor too, but it's like most of our APIs are like quite stable now, so we don't anticipate ever changing them. But with V3, there's like a few things that we've identified, that make it hard to, guarantee some things or make it hard to ensure fast build times, and those sort of, again, like we really care about like fast builds, about correctness, about like stability, about like reliability, like you just sort of like can do all sorts of different stuff and it like handles all those things. And so whenever we find instances where, like it's sort of like it's just not handling something correctly, then we will strongly start to consider breaking changes, because there's a trade-off between stability and then ongoing occurrences of people running into trouble because the API wasn't like correctly designed. And so that's kind of like how we think about things. But nothing's really come up so far that's like going to be that hard to deal with. It's like, and what we have right now won't even affect most people at all. So it should be pretty smooth release.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up, but thank you all for watching today. Do keep an eye out for our next stream with Aisha on March 19th, and we'll be doing these Q&As with Kyle probably every couple of months. So stay tuned, follow us on Twitch, whatever you want to do. And thank you so much, Kyle. Thanks to our captioner, and we'll see you all around.
Bye.
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 All right.